Hey friends, did you know that Feminist Frequency recently launched the Games and Online Harassment Hotline? Well, we sure did. It is a confidential, text-based emotional support resource for folks who make and play games. You can learn more at gameshotline.org, and please, please help us spread the word so we can reach the people who need it the most.
There's that feeling you get as a poorer person sometimes of like, oh, this is like how it's quote unquote supposed to be. You know, if you're a quote unquote successful person, you know, this is how your life looks. Your life looks more like this. And I don't know, it's just something that really can get inside you.
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love, or the media you hate, or the media you feel mediocre about. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm joined today by a woman who just can't wait to hit the open road, Carolyn Pettit.
Hey.
Which is very true. I think we all are like, this is like the second time we've talked about road tripping on this show.
Yeah, there's definitely a big kind of restlessness that's built up this year, being stuck in my apartment most of the year and, you know, looking forward to whatever future day on which I can maybe get behind the wheel and actually, you know, drive somewhere again. But
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ebony isn't here with us because she took a wrong turn at Albuquerque and she just got lost. So maybe we'll see her again in the future.
Mm-hmm. See her again down the road.
This week, we're going to be talking about the critically acclaimed new film, Nomadland. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining us on this last episode before the new year. Before we kick things off, I just want to mention that we are in the midst of our end-of-year fundraising campaign, which is really important for us to get through the year and to keep Feminist Frequency running. I think we can all agree that 2020 has been a tough year for so many reasons, and nonprofits have been hit particularly hard. The challenges of this year have put increased strain on our budgets, while at the same time, a lot less money is coming in from grants and other previously promised funding sources. So we're really proud that this year, in the midst of everything that's been happening, we were finally able to open the Games and Online Harassment Hotline to support the emotional well-being of folks who make and play games. We've already served people who have felt the effects of isolation and loneliness, of harassment online, of discrimination in the workplace, and the impacts of instability and uncertainty. You can help the hotline serve even more people, because with your support, we can build the infrastructure to open for longer hours, to reach out to more communities, and to get the word out to the people who need it the most. Please donate today at feministfrequency.com/donate. Hello, Carolyn.
Hey, Anita. How are you?
It's so nice to have you back.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be back.
You're gone for 1 week, and I don't know what to do without you.
Aw. Well, it's been a whirlwind of a week for me. So actually the morning that we're recording this, just so folks know, in case they don't, I reviewed Cyberpunk 2077 for Polygon. So if folks are interested in reading that, they can hop on over to polygon.com and, you know, find my review there. But it's always, I'll be honest, it's one of those mornings where, and I'm getting a lot of great, like really positive, you know, response to the review, which is wonderful. Like it's always gratifying to get that. But, it's also one of those days where it's hard to pull your eyes off of Twitter because, I mean, this game is so, you know, it's been so hugely built up and anticipated for so long. And obviously, like, there are not all by any stretch of the reactions I'm getting are positive. And there's just so many reactions that, so it's been a bit of like an overstimulating morning with the Twitter just constantly like buzzing. But
yeah, I totally hear that. I know, like, when you can't, you're like, I posted and did the thing, and now it's online. Now I can do other things, but then you can't stop looking, and you're just like, why is it like this?
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to talk about the game a little bit in the bonus if you're up for it.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah,
we can
review a bit. Sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
cool.
Great.
All right. One quick housekeeping thing. I just want to let y'all know that we have been streaming so much at twitch.tv/femfreak. So if you'd like to join us, please do. You can follow us at twitch.tv/femfreak. We are currently streaming every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific and every Saturday at 12 p.m. Pacific for the entire month. We've got a bunch of friends joining us, and we're playing a bunch of cool games. So, including Among Us, where we all murder each other and then lie about it, which, some people seem to enjoy that. But yeah, please join us. Twitch.tv/FemFreq. All right. I am actually really excited about this movie. Let's just get into it, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So the new film Nomadland begins by informing us that in 2011, a sheetrock plant in the town of Empire, Nevada, shut down due to lack of demand. The impact of the shutdown on the town itself was so devastating that just 6 months later, the zip code for it was discontinued. Frances McDormand stars as Fern, a woman who once lived in Empire with her late husband and who now travels from place to place in her van, doing odd jobs here and there, just trying to stay above water. As writer, director, and editor, Chloe Zhao film shows us, Fern is part of a whole culture of American workers without roots in any one place, going wherever there's work and a decent place to park their vehicle, just struggling to get by with no safety net except what her fellow travelers can offer.
Oh God, I love this movie so much. So this
movie's amazing. Let's just start. This is 100% a Carol movie, and it's fucking amazing. It's sensational.
Yeah, and I mean, so this film, obviously, it's sensational. For me, it's deeply meaningful because it ties in to so many of the concerns that I constantly rail about on this show, any class, right? This film is all about class and income inequality and instability and the kind of, the exploitation of the American worker, the lack of safety nets and resources and all those things, the fears of these characters are my fears. I feel these things in my bones, and all of that. But it's also it's not just some sort of dry, it's not some dry political treatise. It is lyrically beautiful. It has images that are so stunning and meaningful, as you see Fern's van in which she lives traveling down these stretches of road where her van is the only thing that the only indication of humanity in this vast natural emptiness. I mean, these images are so powerful, right? And they just speak so much to the experiences of Fern and of people like her. I mean, something I've thought about a lot this year having been what it is that poverty on its own is really devastating and terrible, difficult to deal with. Loneliness on its own is really difficult and devastating and debilitating to deal with. But poverty and loneliness together are a really just they both become so much more dangerous and frightening and everything. And I felt a lot of that in this film, while also this being very much a film that has other people in it. It's alive with connection and relationships and and all these things, people coming together to out there on the road, forming these communities of workers who are having similar experiences, doing what they can to help each other out. It's yeah.
Some context for this film, I think that would be interesting. Well, first of all, it was just released for I think 2 weeks through a film festival. It's all sold out right now, so if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, it should be released in wide release in February, I believe, is what I read. So,
right.
If you really don't like hearing us talk about movies that you haven't seen, come back to this episode in February when it comes out. But so. One thing that I think is really interesting about this is Chloe Zhao is known for The Rider, which is a film about a cowboy in the South, I think. I haven't seen it yet, although I really want to.
Yeah, I saw The Rider last year or whenever it was kind of released, maybe 2 years ago. Also a really beautiful film. I think it's South Dakota.
Okay.
I want to say that's where that film is set. So go ahead.
Well, so Zhao is known for not working with traditional actors.
Yes.
She goes in and she works with the people of the community that she's talking about. And I believe that Frances McDormand is her first like movie star that she's ever actually directed. Right. So a lot of almost everyone in the film in Nomadland is of the community she's talking about. They're like inspired by true stories of these people and the wanderers and the nomads and the workers that are in these spaces.
Yeah. And to me, that is so central to the power of this film is like the faces that you see in this film, with the exception of Frances McDormand and David Strathairn, who's also featured in the film, who's also a kind of recognizable actor for some people. Like the people who Fern connects with, who she has relationships with out on the road are, they just don't look like people you usually see in films, and for me, there is something so powerful about that. I mean, about that really makes this work as a story about the people whose stories are basically almost never told in, the American, the aspects of like American economic life and things that we like to brush under the carpet that cinema doesn't usually focus on or deal with. Seeing those kinds of faces in this film really just lends it that added veracity, that added that real truthfulness.
I feel like one of the things that I found extremely powerful was Fern herself. I think Frances McDormand was incredible in this film, and like you couldn't quite, just when you think you have a handle on like Fern's identity and internal struggles, it pivots a little bit, and then it pivots again, and then it pivots again in this incredible depth of character. So like, you're not totally sure what's up at the beginning, right? At first, I'm like, oh man, is this going to be a takedown of Amazon? Because I'm here for this, right? But then you start to realize that like, no, she's living in this van and she's going from job to job, and that like, you sort of initially think that it's because she is poor and she like she has no other option, which is not untrue. But as the story unravels, you learn the depths of like the loss of her husband, the loss of this town. Like she, even when she has the opportunity to put down roots several times, she just can't. There's such an enormous depth to like, I walked away from this being like, humans are messy and complicated, and like being a human is hard. Yeah. Like that's literally what I was thinking, is that like she doesn't have to live this life, and she sort of struggles, but that she's almost she almost believes that she should be struggling.
Yes, and I mean, so I as a viewer, I struggled a bit with my feelings around this aspect of the film because I'm so guarded against the perspective of, for lack of a better term offhand, like the neoliberal viewer, that I'm worried that a neoliberal viewer might view this film and think like, oh, but she chooses it. Like it's a choice. And, whereas, I wanted this film, and on some level, part of me wanted this film to make it really clear that for so many people, this lifestyle of like extreme precarity and uncertainty and rootlessness and all of these things, like, is not a choice. But, but at the same time, like the way the complexity of Fern's character, so I am as someone who, like, I fully understand how difficult it is to just like accept help, right? Like, I mean, I think a lot of us have deeply ingrained in us, like, you don't want to be a burden, you don't want to like do this, you don't want to do that, and so like there are definitely aspects of Fern's guardedness as a person that are extremely easy to understand.
Totally, and she even says, which I think was really important, is like, I just want to work. Like, I like work. Like, she wants meaning in her life, and even if the jobs are not like empowering work, it still gives her something to do. right? It gives her some, like, she is making money for herself so that she can continue living. And I think that that's very related to what you're talking about of like, I kind of have to do this on my own.
Yeah.
Which isn't true, but like,
but the film is careful to point out, like, because we do hear, for instance, characters, like, we hear characters talk about how, like, some, like, there's a person whose story is told who felt like they had to waste all their time working, and then they died, like, before they even had a chance to, like, do the sort of things for enjoyment or personal fulfillment or fun that they had looked forward to doing. And I believe that American capitalism leaves so many of us with no choice but to, quote unquote, waste all of our time because we're so, because we're paid so little, and we, whatever, we just have to work just to barely scrape by. Yeah.
I felt like I kept, so they address this, but I was thinking about it even before they get there of like a lot of the people we see are in their 60s and 70s. They are older,
aging,
they
right?
They have several health ailments. Yes. One woman in particular had cancer, and she was still living alone, and like, she had broken her arm or something. She was wearing a sling. And was like, I gotta paint my van and keep it in tip-top shape, and I'm gonna go on this one last adventure kind of thing. And I just kept thinking, like, how painful of a life this is for older folks, right? Like,
yes.
Man, look, I'm not old, but like, I'm in my late 30s, and if I sit on a plane for like more than 5 hours, I'm like, oh God, this hurts. I'm in so much pain, like this light, like, and the labor that they're doing is like standing, it's physical labor, it's manual labor. Like, I felt so, I just felt so much for these people who was like, like you're saying, it's a choice, but it's also not a choice, right? Mm-hmm. That like, if they had a home in one place in a town that might have work, because remember, Fern wanted to stay in the town that her and her husband grew up in, and there's just no jobs there. Like, she's traveling to find work. That's the only choice she has. And it's not the choice that she wants.
Right.
And so I was just thinking about how, like, man, like, when you get that old, you should just be able to fucking relax,
Exactly. And the film
sick.
The film is, I think, careful to point that out. Like, we hear people talking about Social Security benefits and how insufficient, these Social Security benefits are for people who, like that woman, I think you meant the older woman with cancer.
I think her name was like Swinky or something like that.
Something like that.
I can't remember.
Like, she just says flat out, like, she says what the monthly benefits would be and how it's just not enough, right? And and that's why the reality of why you have so oftentimes, people into their 70s or 80s still kind of working at Walmart for, like, whatever, $12 an hour or whatever it is, because because there aren't, Social Security benefits aren't enough or whatever, and they just, even if they don't want to be doing these jobs, like, and there is that dichotomy, right? Of course, sometimes it's like, yes, well, I'd rather have a place to go and things to do and see people and all of that, but also that myth of like, the nobility of work is something, that this very American thing that can like push us into or into like working ourselves until we die without ever like living the lives that we want to live, right?
Yeah. There's an interesting contrast that they're drawing, that the film draws too. When Fern goes to work at the rock farm, the gem farm, that like weird hippie ass or whatever the fuck that place was. And she looks out and she sees like, a dozen or, half a dozen young, I believe they were all white or mostly white kids with dreads that like obviously are themselves nomadic in some ways or themselves like, houseless. And I, At first, I'm just like, oh, fucking white kids with dreads, fuck off. Like I'm just like angry about it. But there is this like parallel that the film is drawing here around like, did those kids get kicked out because their parents don't approve of the like their lifestyle choices? Like, did they have nowhere else to go and they found their own family together, like their found family, just like, Fern is kind of doing, except of a different generation. And then she later in the movie, she sees one of them, and that scene felt a lot stronger to me than the one I just described, because there's something so vulnerable about everything about it. Like the kid is just like lost, like he's a very young lost kid who is like, doesn't know what to do and doesn't know where to go. And none of that is said, like it's apparent. And
yes.
Fern is being a little maternal by being like, here, have a sandwich.
Yeah.
Like, do you need some food? Like, where do you love? Like, is there someone you love in the world? Like, what are you doing here? And I almost want to ask Fern those same questions.
Yeah, I right. I do too. Like I felt by the end this kind of protectiveness of her, and so there's another character named Dave who's played by the actor David Strathairn.
Yeah, sorry. Can I just say before you continue that?
Yes.
When Dave came on screen, I was like, why do I like him immediately? Why? Like, why do I feel warmth towards this character? And it's because he's Ashford from The Expanse,
right?
And I was like, oh, that's right. Right.
And Dave, he likes Fern. I mean, he likes her as a person. He
wants to smooch her. Come on,
he does. But so when there's a point in the film when he says like, I like you, I like being around you, and he, as it happens, like he has his family has a lovely home and all this stuff, and like, God, I wanted Fern because I felt protective of Fern, and because Dave seems like basically a good guy. I was like, oh, come on, Fern, like here, you can have this, like, but it's just, I guess it just doesn't feel right to Fern. Doesn't feel like home. She's not that into Dave. Whatever it is, like she has her reasons. Is it like genuinely not right for her, or is it that she is so kind of needs to be so sort of self-sufficient and is so guarded that she can't let herself accept it, even though maybe it would be the better thing for her.
I feel like they paired it with a conversation around like she still wears her wedding ring, like she's still committed to her husband,
right?
And that there's this sense of like she can't let anyone else in, which is the same reason why she can't put down roots anywhere else, right? Like her husband loved the town of Empire, and so she never wanted to leave it, and she was forced to, but she like created Empire in her van, she created that space, and it's like how no one can, you don't see, actually that's not true, I'll take that. I was going to say you don't see other people in her van, but you do once. I think that there's also like, so with Dave, we get this sense that he's living this life because he was a bad father, and that he didn't, and that like he has these deep regrets around like being a bad father and not being there for his kid, and like and that he can't forgive himself for it. So when Fern's like, go be a grandfather, what's wrong with you? He's like, I guess this is an opportunity for me to try again and to be better. Whereas I think Fern hasn't forgiven herself for whatever it is she's struggling with. Like Dave figured it, like he found peace with his demons to the degree that he was able to go live that like life with his family again and not be isolated anymore. Because I think like there are people who can be alone with themselves, like that feel good and safe and loved with themselves. But like we need to be around community and other humans. Like that's not just like a whether you're good at being alone. It's a like humans need other people. And so I think that sort of isolationist life is a punishment. And I think that this show, like a self punishment. And I think that this movie is really, not overtly by any means, but like trying to sort of dissect that a little bit and understand why it is someone would live like this. And I say that in that, like, it does, there are these moments of joy, right? The community, the like people you meet, the relationships that she builds, like they feel very meaningful and very like supportive and lovely, you know?
Yeah. So one of the people she meets is a real person named Bob Wells, who kind of started, or I don't know, is a sort of leader of a kind of little movement of nomads who gather right in their vehicles and who kind of have these meetups and everything. And like through him and through the times that Fern kind of spends at those places where that's where you see that you get that feeling of community, but you also get a sense of like, oh, this is like a widespread thing. And even if for Fern it is a choice, and for Dave it is a choice, or like the self-imposed exile or whatever, like I do think you get at least a bit of a feeling that, well, for a lot of these people, like a lot of these people probably don't have like Fern has a sister, with her own family and who she can kind of call or go to for money and stuff. Like, there are people who don't have even that much, And I really liked how the film, in those scenes, dealt with like the practical stuff of this life. Like, well, like you have to go to the bathroom, right? Like, how does that work? Like, what do you do out there? Yeah. And, or like people have their tricks for, just dealing with issues that may happen. And I don't know. It's just like, it's also a situation where every crisis is so magnified. Like a flat tire can be like, just truly can upend your entire life to a degree that, most people would never think about. But when that's your whole lifestyle, is your vehicle and you're just going from place to place, like a flat tire can, it can stop everything.
There's a really powerful scene where where her van is in a repair shop, and they're like, your car at best is worth like double the amount it's going to cost you to fix it,
right?
The van. And she's like, it's my home. Like, I'm not just going to sell my home because it's like not worth enough. You know what I mean? Like it really cemented that, like, you're like, cool, you just literally like drove your home into a stranger's like garage and was like, please trust I'm trusting you to fix it. Right. It's not like you and I taking our car in for a repair and it's like in the shop for a couple days or whatever.
Right.
I think that was like really cementing this, like, at the very beginning, she's working at an Amazon as like a temp worker, and she's watching someone go through their tattoos of Morrissey lyrics.
Yes. Yeah.
And like one of them is home is just a word, or is home just a word or something you carry with you. And that, like, I made a note of it because I thought it was funny that like there's this extended scene about Morrissey tattoos, but like that is the entirety of this movie. Like that's like the thesis statement of this movie is like, where is home? What does home mean?
Yeah.
And then I love the counter at the, like, near to the end. There's another scene where someone else talks about their tattoos, which you're just like, that this shit happens. Like that like that these people meet other people who like go through their entire, like, I'm going to get this and then this, and I did this. And I enjoyed that little bit of like humanity, and the whole thing is full of humanity, but I thought that was amusing.
Yeah.
I think it's the very last scene. It's a visual that sort of stuck with me. So, here, spoilers. So that big spoilers for the very end. Dave invites Fern to stay with him. And I love the like minimal dialogue in some of these scenes, right? Like she never says no. You just see her in the car again, right?
Yeah,
you just see her driving again.
Yeah.
And, she's going through, it's like a montage of like repeating the year that we just watched.
Yeah.
Right. And then she's back she's back in Empire, and like her the abandoned houses and her house. And she walks in and she, like, whatever, she walks out the back And previously she explained to someone how much this house meant to her, and that she lived on the edge of town, and when you looked out the back window, it was just desert until the mountains. And she talked about how it's just like endless open land where you could just escape to.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last scene of her just like walking out that door into that openness and it was so beautifully shot.
Oh.
This film, I just want to shout out to the cinematographer is Joshua James Richards, who's actually Jaw's husband. And I just remember like sitting and watching the slowness of that shot and kind of never wanting it to end, right? Like I didn't even want the credits to come up because I just wanted to sit with that for a while.
Yeah, I mean the imagery, that kind of, in a way, seems to feel. It felt like it brings things full circle from the opening shot of the van in a wide open expanse where there's like nothing else. The imagery in this film is truly like breathtaking and
oh my God, so beautiful.
Really, really, it makes this film. You feel the landscapes in this film, right? You feel the vastness of the space that Fern is covering. You feel the emptiness of it all, and that's a huge part of what makes this film so effective as what it is.
It seemed like the most of the people they were interacting with, and most of the people in this like particular nomad community that like. They actually filmed this for 4 months, traveling through the American West in an RV with like real workers, right? As we said, it is quite white, right? Like the people in it are very white, which I just want to like acknowledge that. I don't know if this is something, if like there isn't like the different ways that class and poverty exist. Intersecting with race and how that manifests, right? Like, is this lifestyle available to people of color, to Black folks, right? Like, the visual of a Black person in a van parked illegally overnight is going to be very different than a white person, right? Like the safety and the of those individuals and the ability to, move in the world this way, I think is very related to their whiteness.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question. I mean, I completely agree. Yes. I think, I don't know. It's just growing up, RVs, like all these are things that I've always sort of associated primarily with whiteness. And I think it is just tied into all, the ways in which white people have much greater degree of safety and freedom in some ways. Even when it's like something like this, where these are not vacations. These are not road trips. This is like a response to hardship. This is a way of struggling to stay alive. As you say, it is maybe a particular way of struggling to stay alive that is far more available to white people than it would be to just other folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a scene where I'm struggling because watching this film, it brought up so many emotions and so many thoughts that then when I sit down to talk about it, it's the challenge of like, what do I even focus on? Or because I can't sort of process all of it at once. But there's a scene with Fern's. So Fern, as I mentioned, Fern has a sister, and that relationship is, I think, kind of strained. But Fern stays with her sister at one point, and her sister's husband, and like there's other folks around. Her sister says this thing. Her sister says, to Fern and for the benefit of people around Fern, because like I think there are folks who judge Fern because of her life and what it is and what she says, I think Fern's part of an American tradition. I think it's great. And my feeling, like my response to that is, I think it's part of an American failure. Like the fact that so many people are living this life right now. Like, I think that it is not, it isn't some like noble tradition. It isn't to me, it is part of an American failure. But like, obviously my circumstances are very different from Fern's, right? But I have that experience, when I go into like the homes of my friends who I went to college with, and they have like steady jobs and families, and they've had steady jobs their whole lives, and they have much more money than I do, and like all of these things. Like, there's that feeling you get as a poorer person sometimes of this is like how it's quote unquote supposed to be. Like, this is like how your life is. Like, this is what if you're a quote unquote successful person, this is how your life looks. Your life looks more like this. And then, and the feeling of contrast with your own life, it can be this thing that really, I don't know, it's just something that really can get inside you, and I feel like Fern, like there's just so much complexity to Fern, which I appreciate, but I feel like she does have this sense of something that like just fundamentally sets her apart, from other people.
Yeah. I felt like when her sister's like, you can stay here, I was like, but why would she want to? Like,
sure, yeah,
why would
yeah.
Like, this isn't the life that she wants. These aren't the people she wants to be around. She doesn't feel at home with these people like she might with folks on the road or elsewhere,
Yes, yeah, and that to me, like, that's such a big thing, like, as you said earlier, like, where is home? What is home? And obviously for Fern Bow, her late husband was home, right? Like, that empire was home, and now where is home? How do you find it? Can you find it again? Does it even exist anymore?
Yeah. This movie's deep.
It is deep. Yes. There's a funny shot, or I found it amusing. At one point, Fern is passing through, some town, and she walks by a movie theater, and the marquee says Avengers, which is funny because Chloe Zhao is making a Marvel film. Now her next film is going to be, what's it called again?
Eternals.
Eternals, right.
Yeah. Carolyn and I had a little bit of a chat about this where we're like, I was like, holy shit, like this visionary doing a Marvel's movie, can't wait to see that. And then Carol, you're like, but I'm happy for her. Like, I wish her all the success in the world, and I certainly hope that she's able to. I'm looking forward to the movie, and hope it's interesting and all that. But at the same time, like, I don't want a filmmaker who because these stories, The Rider and this, are to me so urgent, right? To me, these are so necessary. To me, these are like examples of what is part of what is missing from, so much of American cinema. And so I want to protect any artist who I think is A, brilliant, and B, telling these kinds of stories. And she is, both of those things. She's a prodigious talent, and she's telling the stories about the people and the lives and the experiences that I think are so often overlooked. I don't want her to. It's just a fear or a concern. Like, please just don't get subsumed into the mainstream, movie making machine, and find a way to do those films. Great, but hopefully also keep making these films as well. In an interview with her that I'm going to link in the show notes, she says, despite working, this is the article says this, despite working with a much bigger budget than she ever had before, Zhao says she was allowed the same creative freedom on Eternals that she had grown used to on her smaller films. I shot exactly the way I wanted to shoot, she says, on location, a lot of magic hour, 360 degrees on the same camera as I did on Nomadland, same rigs. It's a bit surreal. I'm still waiting for the shoe to drop. It hasn't. I think I got lucky in that Marvel wants to take risks and do something different. So I'm hoping that that's not just like PR shit she's saying to press, but that like maybe we're going to see something like really different and interesting here. Like, there's more in this about how like the pitch of the story that she wants to tell with the Eternals and how they just were like, yes, let's do that. And she has a very deep connection to growing up reading manga. So like that's influencing this. So I'm actually, after I hear all of your concerns and echo them, and after reading this, I'm just like, okay, cool. Like I'm sincerely curious to see what happens here. But I hope that she doesn't, I hope she continues to have opportunities to do these kinds of films that she's like clearly so skilled at. Like, look, when I saw the end credit and it said written, directed, and edited by Chloe Zhao, I was like, shut the fuck up. I quit. Like, we can never do anything as good as talented as this woman. Like, damn, I'm a fan now, clearly. So cool.
Welcome. Welcome to the ranks.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. All right, y'all. We'll be right back. Earlier, I mentioned that we've launched our end of year campaign, and I want to give you just one more reason to support us, this very show you are listening to right now. In addition to the critical work we are doing to end abuse in the games industry, we have not forgotten our roots. Demanding more just media representations, demanding accountability from media makers is as important as ever. We've seen some remarkable improvements over the years, but the work isn't done yet. So please head over to feministfrequency.com/donate and give generously to help us keep bringing feminist media criticism to the airwaves. That's feministfrequency.com/donate. What's your freak out? Now it's time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. So I have 3.
Yeah.
How would I just like barrel through these really quickly? I normally don't do this, but I'm like, it's the last one of this season, and I feel strongly about all of these things. So why don't I share my little gems with everybody? First of all, Mrs. Fletcher is a show on HBOMax that I must have been somewhere else because it came out last year, and I'm obsessed with it. It's fucking brilliant, and I really encourage everyone to watch it. I don't know. I'd never heard anyone talking about it. So I don't know. I'm just a little sad that it hasn't gotten the due I think it deserves. It's like, it stars Catherine Hahn, and it is about a woman whose son goes off to college, and she's divorced, and she's, lonely and doesn't know what her life means without like fawning and obsessing over her kid. And she just like gets really horny. And like, like she's just like masturbating all over the place and watching porn and being like, and she works at a nursing home, and, like she's trying to figure out who she is, right? Like she's taking this like writing class, and she's like figuring out what it means to like not have had sex for 3 years and like missing touch and just like kind of wanting to fuck everyone she sees. And like, it's not, and I'm saying that in this as if it's like, it's not grotesque, and not that that's not the right word, but it's like, it's such a beautiful, subtle isn't the right word, but like sincere and honest look at like loneliness and sexuality and like being lost in yourself and where you're at. There's also it goes, the B story is her son, who's a complete piece of shit, and was like a popular kid in school, and then he goes to college and he just like is really lost. And at first I was like, oh God, I hate this kid. I mean, I continue to hate him, but I understand the value of that story being in tandem with the story of the mom, and how that sort of peaks at the end. And it's so good. Please watch it and then message me or come hang out in the FemFreak Discord because it's so good. Also, it has the best like female masturbation scene I've ever seen on TV. So it's worth it just for that. Okay, the next thing that I'm like obsessed with is I just finished listening to a podcast called Dolly Parton's America. And y'all, this is like, I think it's the best podcast I've ever heard. I get so impressed with the ability to tell complex, weaving stories that all kind of like they branch off and then come back together. And in this 9-part series, that's what they do. They go into all of these different aspects of Dolly Parton's identity and her situation in the world. And, you know, it gives you a little bit of context for people who are like, yeah, we all know who Dolly Parton is, but do you know how she got started? Like, do you know why she's famous? You know, and all of those kinds of things. And then it goes into like the impact that she has on different communities, how, whether she's a feminist or not, like what her politics actually are, like how that shifts and changes. And it's all done there's the through line is a interview with her, like multiple interviews that they have with her, and then interviews with like experts on her or people in and around her, or, you know, it's so fucking good. It's so good. And the question they're asking is like, why does Dolly Parton cross the boundaries of identity? Why can like hardcore Republican conservatives love Dolly Parton and also like super fucking queer, like hipsters, like all go to her concerts and they're all just like equally in love with her, you know, and like value her. So it's really good. Please listen to it. And then the last thing is there is a game called Haven by the Game Bakers. We just streamed a little bit of it. If you want to watch that replay on twitch.tv/femfreak. It is a really charming game about two lovers who are sort of like abandoned in a... I haven't played enough of it to know exactly where it goes, but like what I find interesting about it is that you are these two characters and you're like slowly learning more about like what they've been through and where they come from, but that like the mechanics of their partnership is built into the game mechanics as well, right? So you fight together and you explore together and you have to cook together. And I think there's just like these really tender, sweet moments in there. So that's it. Those are all my freakouts.
Something for everyone.
It is quite broad, right?
Yeah.
A game, a TV show, and a podcast.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the last episode of this season, but we will be back in the new year. So please wear a mask and be safe until then and after then. And we'll remind you then as well. This show is engineered by Rob Pera. Gary Stimson provides technical support, artwork by Jamie Varon, and our intro music is by Phil Circus. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.